Hi there. George R. R. Martin just made a new blog post in which he gave a pretty big update about all of the Game of Thrones prequel shows and spin-offs. There wasn't any one big bombshell, but it was breadth over depth that he gave incremental updates on pretty much every project. All of them are moving forward. There's a little bit of news on pretty much everything. It was very comprehensive. And I want to go over that. To start with, before anyone starts making comments, and I hate it when people start writing their own stuff before even watching my video, yes, there was a new blog post, and it's not the Winds of Winter release date. Get that out of your system. If you write that, I'm going to delete it from the comments. I'm not joking. Unless you have something constructive like trying to guess he has so many 100 pages done, let's try to calculate when he could be done. That's constructive, I get that. But it's turned into just a sad joke at this point of people going, I'm mad Winds of Winter is out. He said he's making progress. It happens when it happens. He didn't say anything new in this blog post that would change my mind that I really think he at this time thinks it could be done by 2023. Because, a while ago when he said, I'm commissioning this new Broadway stage play of The Tourney at Harrenhal, which was the opening event of Robert's Rebellion, something which he's always said, I will never reveal details about that before the book is done. And yeah, he could run into, writer's block at some other point between now and then, but I think Martin himself thinks he can be done by 2023 in that region. Nothing really changed with that. He said he's making progress on that. And it's just people get upset when he makes blog posts saying, my friend of 40 years just died. People will complain on social media in the comments, why isn't Martin posting about Winds of Winter? It's, in the past 3 years, a lot of people who were dear friends of his died in rapid succession. Not COVID, unrelated reasons, because they're all advancing in years. Gardner Dozois, a lot who edited some of the prequel novellas, and a lot of other people he knew, and just reading this, it's a gut punch listening to all of that. And people complain when he's just remarking on something of, these are precious seconds you could be using to work on Winds of Winter. And I know, as a guy with a big to-do list I've shown you guys my to-do list of videos, you have to get in the mindset of, I am working now. And you make a lot of progress that, literally every second of the day, like when he's like, hey, I watched a football game today, it was nice. People yell at him, I don't just get up, make videos on my end, and nothing else. I have other lighthearted things I do. I understand that as someone trying to meet a deadline here, that it is hard, and he is making, they're gigantic books, and it's not just one book, but figuring out how it ties into the other ones. Says he's making progress. I don't want to spend more time on that, but people yell about it. Mostly I'm saying this to give you fair warning. If you write a complaint, I will delete it. Don't even bother. If you write, here's my analysis of when he could be done, that's fine. That's speculation. That's not hypercritical of that. Or you could even speculate, I wonder what is slowing him down. That's also legitimate. But complaining, not going to happen. And it's so weird when you see, the hype, shallow news sites, not everyone, but some of them, it pops up in your news feed of George R. R. Martin says Winds of Winter isn't done yet. And that's the only thing they took from this very extensive and comprehensive blog post about all the prequel spin-offs, which I care about. And you can tell some of these news sites probably never read any of the books. They're just complaining about it because I can kind of get if you read the books and you're complaining about it. It's just, what right do you have to complain about a book series you never read and you've had years to read? So getting that out of our systems now with I'm already 5 minutes into this, he was positive. He said he's been working on stuff. He gave a very comprehensive overview of all the progress and all the different prequel projects, which we are invested in. Not really House of the Dragon stuff. On all the other stuff, the other pitches, prequels in development. As for House of the Dragon, he said it's going very well. He said more broadly, how much am I involved in the new prequel shows? A lot. I am deeply, heavily involved in every one of the new shows, which, as I've said in other videos, is great. That me and Talking Thrones made another video about this, that Martin doesn't need to be praising House of the Dragon. That if he didn't want to, people going, oh, this is just him being nice. He didn't like the Long Night prequel, and he said nothing about it. He didn't like the later seasons of Game of Thrones. He wasn't publicly negative. He just didn't say anything about it. And maybe that's due to NDAs, or he's too much of a professional to do that. It must be NDAs, because he's worried that if he yells, they won't make his other prequels, I guess. It's a bad situation. But he hasn't put out blind praise before for every project. He just stays silent on the things he didn't like. This he's been very vocal about. I like the rough cuts of the episodes I'm seeing. He said that in other blog posts before this. So he seems very happy with it. I've already talked about that. One other thing. He made another blog post like the day or day after this one, the one with all the update, where he just posted an image of frogs. Black and green frogs. And this is going back to the early Game of Thrones days. I forget how this joke originated, but whenever he's about to make a casting news, when casting news is about to come out or something big, he'll hint at it by posting images of frogs on his blog. I don't think he meant anything by the number of frogs. Someone pointed out it's the picture that comes up when you Google black and green frogs. But frogs equals casting announcements are imminent. And they're black and green frogs. Blacks and the greens are the two factions in House of the Dragon. So Martin seems to be hinting at us something is going to happen imminently. Casting announcements, a new teaser trailer, I don't know, but that was encouraging. But this wasn't really about House of the Dragon news. This was about all the other ones. And there were 7 new points of information from this. Really 5, the last 2 were very small, but basically 7. It's nice incremental updates about everything. First, all 3 of the current live-action prequel pitches have advanced from the pitch phase to the we ordered a pilot script phase. Until now, we'd only heard that the Nymeria one had gone to we ordered a script. That I explained this, that it's not, even before you get a pilot script, you write up this 100-page treatment, which is what a pitch is. It's a formal pitch. It's not, hey, I pitched an idea for what we're going to do for lunch today. No, it's a pitch. It specifically means this type of document. It's a 100-page description. Then it advances to the pilot script phase. Up until now, it was just a Nymeria one. He confirmed, through the way he described it, that they're working on the script now, that the other 2, the Young Corlys Velaryon show and the Duncan Egg one, have also advanced to the pilot script phase. Now, these are all the second wave of prequel pitch attempts. The first wave was the War of the 5 pitches, remember that? And one was Long Night, another was House of the Dragon. That of those 5, only 3 advanced to the script phase. The third one was Old Valyria. The linguist later confirmed that. 2 of them never advanced beyond the pitch phase. So it was entirely possible that one of these 3 projects could have been dropped just as we don't like the pitch. No, they said all 3 of them have advanced from pitch phase to pilot script phase. That is no guarantee they will film a pilot episode, much less that it'll be greenlit to series or something. But this is progress. This is an update. I didn't know this a week ago. I wondered, maybe they're going to drop that other show for whatever reason, and they didn't. Point 2 out of 7. Martin clarified and confirmed the working titles for all 3 potential live-action projects. I mean, up until now, we've been calling them the Young Corlys one, or the Duncan Egg one. Now, you said there is a working title, and working titles are, of course, subject to change, and they did change one of them. But he said, this is what we're calling it now, so why didn't I get this report out in the past 48 hours? Well, I was updating the wiki with it. I was making wiki articles, which I will link below, for each of these as a distinct project that deserves its own article. Also, like I said, my cat's been very sick with a heart condition. He's doing better, but I was in and out of vet hospitals the last 2 days tweaking his medication because it keeps making him nauseous. So that still eats up a lot of my time. I made a whole big video saying this will be eating a huge chunk of my time will be my cat is very sick with a heart condition now. But he's getting better, he's stabilizing, and I'm trying to get back into the swing of things, but that ate up a lot of this week. Then I had to make articles for it first because that was imminent. Now I'm getting to this, and because so many of the other news channels focused on, we're getting no Winds of Winter, I don't feel I'm too late. Like Talking Thrones and Preston Jacobs actually focused on what's news about the other spin-offs. Lucifer Means Lightbringer. I was in the chat room watching that. He also did a really good, well, it's 2 hours long form. I don't like doing live streams. I actually script things out because I'm trying to control it. And I don't have the confidence to do a live stream like some people, but he covered that pretty well. Okay, what are we doing with the other things? But that's like 3 channels versus people just yelling about, damn it, there's no Winds of Winter. And Preston Jacobs was actually pretty angry about no Winds of Winter news, but like, I'm trying to be zen about it. It happens when it happens. He says he's making progress. Why do we need to yell? He gave us a nice update about the status of the other prequel shows. That this is news we didn't have before. Point 1, they're all pilot scripts stage. Point 2, the working titles. The one about Nymeria and the Rhoynar by Amanda Siegel is specifically titled 10,000 Ships. Now, I've been alternately calling it Nymeria and the 10,000 Ships of the Rhoynar, Nymeria and the Rhoynar. It's 10,000 ships. And judging from the way Martin wrote it, it's spelled out as words, not the numerals, 1 with 4 zeros after it. We're talking 10,000 ships as 3 distinct words. So that's why I titled the article and everything. Second one, the Young Corlys Velaryon show with Bruno Heller attached, who is famous for developing HBO's Rome show. That one is called The Sea Snake. That's the new working title. They actually changed it. That we thought, is it the 9 voyages of Corlys Velaryon, or is it Corlys Velaryon's voyages? We didn't know what they were doing. Turns out the original working title was 9 voyages. 2 words, not numerals. But they decided that it was something like it was unwieldy to have 2 prequel pitches at the same time that both had numbers in the name. That it just didn't sound right to them. I don't know why. So they said, we changed the working title from 9 Voyages to The Sea Snake. Fine. I mean, the whole thing is the 9 Voyages of Young Corlys Velaryon, also known as The Sea Snake. But it's The Sea Snake. That's fine. That doesn't overlap with other things. And think about it. What does that imply? We didn't want to have 2 shows with numbers in the title. They're actually seriously considering doing both of them concurrently. Because if they were all vying for only one solitary spot as another prequel to work on alongside House of the Dragon, there's only going to be 2 concurrent ones, House of the Dragon and one of these vying for a single spot, they wouldn't have cared if 2 of them had numbers in the title. That this implies, no, they're trying to make their own cinematic universe, like Star Wars and Marvel. Then people go, oh, they're trying to do that because it's popular now. It's popular for a reason. We like having cinematic universes. It gives us more content. I mean, I've seen so many Game of Thrones franchise channels devastated by the lack of content in the past 2 going on 3 years. And just like I saw Smokescreen did this really hard to watch a video where it just hit me that just how much the community has been devastated, how people who rely on this for money, I mean, for paying bills money, have been devastated. That this used to be, a real freelance job almost for some people, for the bigger ones, not for me. But the community and just how much we've been gutted over this. And having too many shows is a problem we want to have. Compared to where we are now, where look how little information there was in the past 4 months. I managed to scrape the bottom of the barrel, work on projects, there's casting stuff to do, but a lot of the other news sites, it's been really hard. That I want to have 3 or 4 shows within a calendar year, not running at the same time, but like Marvel they're spacing out. They're going to have Moon Knight soon, and then they had Hawkeye, and then they'll have Miss Marvel later. I want a cinematic universe. It'll be nice. I mean, there'll be like one flagship and then a couple of one-shots. I'm fine with that. So that's crucial to me. The fact that we didn't want two shows at the same time with numbers in the title means they're not vying for a single spot. They want all of these. The third and last one actually doesn't have a formal working title yet, the Dunk and Egg one. There's 10,000 Ships and the Sea Snake, but the Dunk and Egg one, Martin actually said it's not called Dunk and Egg because they said people, HBO pointed out rightly, people wouldn't be able to tell if that's just a sitcom or something. It doesn't sound Game of Thrones-y. And I understand that, I really do. So Steve Conrad's working on that one. So Martin said they're debating between two working titles right now. He said, we're debating whether to call it A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms or The Hedge Knight. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is the name of the hardcover collection of the first three finished Dunk and Egg novellas. It's not as long as a full A Song of Ice and Fire one, but it's like a good 300-page. You can read this as a normal book instead of the doorstoppers we normally get, and it's three novellas all collected there. And it was great when that came out in, I think, 2016, because you didn't have to hunt around for collections that had... Casual readers, general audience readers didn't have to hunt around for that anymore. It's an anthology of unrelated fantasy things, or you get a PDF that the person on the street that doesn't know that much about this can walk into a bookstore or online through the Kindle store and go, oh, this is all the Dunk and Egg stuff in one hardcover. Okay. I actually do think A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a bit generic, and The Hedge Knight might be a better name to describe the point that hedge knights are itinerant knights for hire, except you don't pay them, you just give them food, and that they're wandering itinerant knights looking for a job. That is a good description of the beginning of it, but then again, like throughout his career, he goes on to become a famous Kingsguard by the time he's an adult. So I don't know which one would be a better title. I think Hedge Knight might be better to start with. Maybe each season could have the different titles from the novellas. They said how they're doing it. I'm not sure, but they're debating between two working titles for Dunk and Egg. This smoothly leads into the third of the 7 points we got from this blog post. Stuff about Dunk and Egg, specifically the Dunk and Egg show. One detail Martin revealed is that they are adapting one novella per season, is the way he put it. Which we didn't really think they'd condense them all into one season or something. That's silly. But there was some argument of that. Well, they're very short novellas. And what I would have done, I've talked about this, is I thought they should be like an anthology of annual TV movies at very high budget. Because it's not like Dragons and Armies. Like, the first one is a tournament. And filming a tournament is actually really expensive. And when you actually go behind the scenes on what it took to film the tournament in Game of Thrones Season 1, that's actually a pretty limited tournament when you think about it in terms of the actual amount of stuff they showed. They had to scale back all sorts of things relative to how it's described in the novels, because it's hard, you're working with live animals, it can be dangerous. So imagine like a movie quality 2 hours showing a fully realized tournament. Yeah, that would be something. But the way he describes it, he doesn't describe it as a series of TV movies, one per year. He describes it as a TV season. And I don't think that really changes too much. I don't think we're getting a 10-episode season out of just the novella The Hedge Knight. Please tell me in the comments, those who have read it, that you can't. But then again, I think they'll just be shorter seasons. Like, a lot of shows are doing this. They don't need to be 10 or even 8 as a magic number. Some of the Marvel shows only have, 6 episodes? Boba Fett had, 7. But, yeah, like Hawkeye, Falcon was, 6 episodes? So, yeah. I don't even think we'll get 6 episodes. What if it's, a season of 3 to 4 episodes, and they marathon them all on one night, back-to-back, to tell the story? On premiere night. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking like a season. It's not that different. It's that whole, well, what's the difference between a long miniseries and a really short TV season? I don't know. So I'm imagining like 3, maybe 4 hours worth of content based on the Hedge Knight. And you can call that a TV movie or a miniseries we aired all on one night back to back, or a short 5-episode series or something. I don't know what format they're going to do. But he said there's going to be one novella per yearly installment, and they don't think of them as TV movies, but as a season. That's some new detail that fuels discussion about how we should do that. And these are really contained events. I mean, they happen over a few days, but even the second one, The Sworn Sword, is a little more drawn out, but then there's the wedding and the second Blackfire Rebellion in the later one. This brings up a separate question, which I want you to discuss in the comments, of will they just adapt the Hedge Knight as it appears in print? Because it's the only one of the other prequels that's fully narrativized. It's not an in-universe history book. Or should they, I wouldn't say pad out, because that's negative, but pad out the season with things that happen off-screen between novellas that they mention. That it's weird that when you pick up the second novella, it mentions in passing all this stuff that happened in the year-long gap between. There's time skips between them. Eventually they'll cover 50 years. The time skips aren't that big between the first 3, but in the second one they go, oh yeah, we went to Dorne and served with the literally insane Lady Vaith. But yeah, that was a big off-screen adventure, wasn't it? Maybe they should show that? And while we're at it, that they said because we were in Dorne, which is physically isolated, they could quarantine themselves well, we missed out on that the rest of Westeros got gutted by this Black Death plague, the Great Spring Sickness. It killed a third of Westeros or something. It hit the cities really bad. And they said, well, we survived because we were in Dorne. It's lightly populated. They just barred the mountain passes, so we missed out on the plague and survived. Should they pad out season 1 by actually showing the plague? Or begin season 2 with that, maybe? Maybe season 1 can be like 3 episodes, and then season 2 can be longer, but by not getting to the Osgrey-Weber conflict right away, but getting to, start the first few with showing them in Dorne, and then switching to other characters and showing the plague and Bloodraven trying to deal with it, showing the king dying, showing the piles of bodies from the plague in King's Landing that they have to push into the dragon pit, and they have these mass graves, and they're burning hundreds of corpses with, like cordwood with wildfire. And he says, at night, the sky is lit up like a second sun from the glow of all the wildfire burning the bodies. It's this horrific plague that hits Westeros, and it happens off-screen between the first and second one. That shouldn't we, show that? To pad out, to extend one of these seasons. Or also, I think they said after we went to Dorne, oh yeah, off-screen, we visited Egg's brother, Maester Aemon, who is a young novice at the Citadel in Old Town. I would like to see that in an episode. So we're not really sure what the season-by-season breakdown for a Duncan Egg show should be. Maybe the first, like I said, I think the better idea, because it's such a contained story, the Hedge Knight, it's this one tournament. I think they should make a 3-episode season, I'm putting in air quotes. Then season 2 might be 6 episodes and cover some of the other events going on. We'll see how they play that, but he describes it as a season, and he says 1 novella per season. So no crazy condensations in there or anything. We didn't think there'd be, but it's not TV movies. But is a season 3 hours? And if it's only 3 hours, could you give it a limited theatrical run just to say you did? I would enjoy that. Now, coming smoothly out of point 3, that leads into point 4 on my list, which is probably going to be the most controversial for some people, because it ties into why aren't you working on Winds of Winter? But no, I'm all for Martin on this. He said, quote, I also need to deliver the second volume of Fire and Blood. And I'm thinking of calling it Blood and Fire instead of just Fire and Blood Volume 2, then people wouldn't buy it. it's so big, covering all 300 years of the history of the Targaryen dynasty, that Fire and Blood Part 1, which isn't called Part 1, it's just called Fire and Blood, covers the first half. And it's a good stopping point. It stops after the Regency, after the Dance of the Dragons, around 150 years into it. The other 150 years will be in Part 2. So there won't be a Part 3, it's just two halves. He said, this is the first half, the second half I have to wait on. And he always said that he wouldn't write anything else, that he stopped all of his other writing to focus on the Winds of Winter. And now here he is saying, I need to get back to work on Fire and Blood Volume 2. And he goes on to say, there's a couple of 100 pages written, and I need to write more of the Dunk and Egg novellas, tell the rest of their stories, especially since there's a television series about them in development. That gives some answers there, that why is he said he wouldn't be writing more, it's he wants to finish more Dunk and Egg novellas if they're earnestly going to make a TV show about it. Some might complain about this, I don't. First off, the second volume of Fire and Blood overlaps extensively with the Dunk and Egg era. That it's the story of the lead up to the first Blackfire Rebellion and its aftermath, and then Dunk and Egg are basically the story of, start with the story of the second Blackfire Rebellion going all the way through the fifth Blackfire Rebellion. And then it turns into the A Song of Ice and Fire era. So it overlaps so much with them. Yeah, there's the Aegon the Unworthy stuff and the Blackfire Rebellion itself, much of which we actually find out about in the Dunk and Egg stuff, because Dunk and Egg, they hear more about the first rebellion in flashback. It overlaps with the Dunk and Egg novellas so much that I don't see these as two distinct projects. They're interrelated, that Fire and Blood Volume 2 is the groundwork for what the Dunk and Egg novellas are when they're fully narrativized. They're one big project. So it makes sense that if he's working on more Dunk and Egg novellas, he'd have to be working on bits of keeping track of his notes with Fire and Blood Volume 2. I don't even consider that distinct. But let's just call this whole point, I'm figuring out more of the Dunk and Egg stories, because there's a TV show coming. Some might complain about this, I don't, depending on how much he does. There's 3 that are finished out of a planned 12. But, and I've reported on this in other videos before, Martin has said, the 4th and 5th ones are like 90% complete. I just dropped what I was doing because everyone was complaining, drop what you're doing to work on the Winds of Winter. But if it's taking a while to get, no roadblocks to Winds of Winter, just if we might get it in 2 or 3 years, in all seriousness, and this is, pay attention here, if Martin said, officially, and kept his word, it will take me 1 month of work to finish up the 4th Dunk and Egg novella to such a state that it can be printed and released to the public, I would tell him to do it. Because it's 1 month. And how many years have we been waiting for Winds of Winter anyway? On the principle of 1 in the hand is worth 2 in the bush and all that, to have something new in hand, if it was earnestly, he has said repeatedly, it's mostly done, I just need to revise it, I would accept that. I think 1 month is a fair payment in time to have an entirely new installment of something in hand, in print, out there, even if it's just a novella and not a full novel, because we haven't had stuff in 4 years. And it'll be a basis of a season down the line, but I would be happy with that. Particularly because the next one is a really popular story. It's The She-Wolves of Winterfell. Dunk and Egg go to Winterfell 100 years before Game of Thrones and get embroiled in this succession crisis between rival Stark widows. We are really looking forward to that. People are hungry for that. Of the 2 that he said are mostly complete, 4 and 5, that's number 4. Number 5 is The Village Hero, and it's they go to the Riverlands and get embroiled in the Blackwood versus Bracken feud. In the process, meeting Egg's future wife, Betha Blackwood. So one is prequel Starks in Winterfell, set in Winterfell, and the other one is one of the 2 main characters meets his future wife and queen. These are both really important and things we're looking forward to. And they're mostly done. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd be upset if he launched into an entirely new project. This is finishing up things that he said were mostly done and needed some touch-ups. And I know if it expanded to more than a month or two, we'd be upset, but as a mental exercise, I'm doing this for the sake of spurring conversation. Tell me in the comments, if you're a fan of Dunk and Egg or if you're not, do you think it's worth it if it really only took him 2 months out of his schedule to finish these 2 novellas? I think that would be worth spending that time just to get it done while he's alive. And then, Winds of Winter could take another 5 years roll. I actually do think it's out in 2023. But it's the tantalizing nature of that. It's a difference between an incomplete work and its imprint. I've given it my okay on this. Also, because we care about, one-shot novellas in anthologies, we hunt them down. The general audience really focuses on those omnibus collections of like 3 at a time. That there's 12 of these eventually, and the first 3 were in one hardcover. Divide by 3, it stands to reason that there's going to be 4 hardcovers in this, eventually. Not as long as the Doorstopper Game of Thrones ones, but would it be worth it if Martin took 3 months and only 3 months out of his schedule to finish up She-Wolves and The Village Hero, which are mostly done, plus whatever the 6th one is, and actually have a book in hand? That consider that the first 2 out of 3 are both 90% done, with over half of it done, and if it really only took him like 3 months of time, I think it would be worth it to have something that's nearly complete anyway. I don't want him to devote his full time to finishing Fire and Blood Part 2. It's what he says, well, I'm working on that, in the sense that it's keeping track of the notes that overlap with the Dunk and Egg stories he's writing right now, because it's about the Dunk and Egg era. I'm fine with if he takes just like a month or 2 to wrap these things up, because they were tantalizingly so close to being finished. And I'd really enjoy that. So he's been doing a bit more Dunk and Egg work, but he is also doing Winds of Winter stuff. He hasn't officially paused that. That's 0.4 out of 7. All of these kind of flowed into each other, but backing up a bit, related but separate topic. 0.5, Martin also talked about the animated prequel projects. We got a leak a couple of months ago that they are considering not 1, but 3 animated prequels, or spin-offs. 2 of them we know nothing about. But it said that one of them is about Yi, which is their world's fantasy version of Imperial China. And it's about as far east of Karth as Slaver's Bay is west of it. They've never mentioned the name Yi on screen in Game of Thrones itself. I think they probably will in House of the Dragon, because infamously Corlys Velaryon sailed to Yi. He was the first man to sail there directly from Westeros, got rich on trading spices and silks. They'll probably be setting all this up. You can see all the projects are tying together. It's not mentioned that much in the main novels, but there is an entire expansive chapter on it in The World of Ice and Fire, which Elio and Linda said that was all Martin. We didn't write anything about the new lands in the East. That all came from him and his notes directly. We actually had to cut a lot out, because a couple of thousand words, because there just wasn't enough room in the print World of Ice and Fire to fit it all. So there's even more notes that haven't been published. So that Yi is this whole expansive new region in the East, and you could have a lot of adventures there. Well, in his blog update, Martin chose his words carefully, and he said, I'm choosing my words carefully, I don't want to give spoilers that haven't already been given. But because it already leaked out, yes, I can confirm that there is a potential animated spin-off about Yi. Well, prequel, because it would technically be set before the events of Game of Thrones, not that they really overlap. But yes, that's another successor show we're considering. And with the amazing power of reading comprehension, let's pick apart specifically what he said. That if you just go, oh yeah, it's a project we're working on. If you pay attention to what he said, he acknowledged This isn't just some idea they're batting around the office or negotiating, that there is a staff attached to this. He said, I've been meeting with the writer on it, that there is a writer attached. That's new information. He didn't say who the writer was because he didn't want to give out new leaks, but he did tell us that there is a writer attached. It's beyond just the concept phase. Also, he said that they've been showing him a lot of concept art, which he really likes. So it's not just a writer, that they have an entire team of artists attached to this already, developing concept art, or this is the animation. Maybe they're concept artists who are attached to an animation studio. I'm not sure, but there's a writer in place. There is a team producing concept art. This is a fairly developed, albeit nascent, project. This seems to be moving forward. So that is all very encouraging. He also, like the other prequels, he told us what the official working title is. The official working title is The Golden Empire, because it's called The Golden Empire of E.T. is its full name. So The Golden Empire for the E.T. show. So I could make, like a wiki article for that and provide updates for it. See the link below. He did vaguely acknowledge that there are other animated projects. We don't have 100% confirmation that there's exactly 2 others. That was the original leak. There's 3, and one of them is E.T. Maybe they've ordered more animated pitches since then, that they're considering, not that they've ordered them, but maybe they're hearing more animated pitches than the 2 we heard about 6 months ago. Maybe one of them got rejected. I don't think one got rejected. The way Martin phrased it was, he said, quote, I can't tell you about the other animated projects. Plural. So there are at least 2 more. That matches what we heard. There might be more than that for all I know, but let's conservatively stick with there's at least 2 more in some stage of consideration. We have no idea what their identity is, but he acknowledged that there's more than one. There's at least 3 of these, apparently. If they're doing Yee-Ti, my guess is that one of the other ones might be the Summer Isles, which is Africa-inspired. And there is a through line. There's actually more of a narrative than there is in Yee-Ti, because Yee-Ti is like, it spans thousands of years. You can give the story of Xanda Quo, who united the Summer Isles against all the slavers from the Giscari Empire, and you could work out stories with that. That there have been fans calling for, you could turn this into a story about the Summer Isles as an animated project. Now, I think part of the reason they want to do a Yee-Ti show is as their answer to Netflix with Avatar: The Last Airbender got really popular on there when they were rerunning it during the pandemic, because Nickelodeon doesn't rerun it anymore. It's been out for like 15 years. It's a great show. It's one of the best modern animated shows of the past 25 years. It is amazing storytelling. And I really hope that the live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender show by Netflix does well when it comes out this November, because we've been burned before and we've heard of, fighting behind the scenes, but we'll see what happens. But I think they wanted their answer to that, and that they wanted to, expand into the Asian market. We've seen them doing launches in Asia for stuff. Also, it's an interesting part of the world. I would like to see E.T. I am interested in E.T. It's this whole other expansive set of stories to tell. I am interested in a Summer Isles show, because it's interesting world building and figuring out all the culture and stuff. Because I'm a guy who updates wikis and stuff. I like all the details and everything. I felt really bad when they were first discussing this. Tony Teflon, who's been running one of the oldest of the Game of Thrones YouTube review channels. He's been around since season 3. He's older than anyone who's still active. I felt bad when we first got news of this, and there might be a Yee-Ti show, when he said, I don't think one of the other 2 could be, he's black. And he said, I don't think one of the other ones is a Summer Isles show, because there's no way HBO would make a show about black people as the main characters. He said that. And I felt really bad that I could not dismiss his concerns out of hand, because HBO, the old HBO leadership, has a terrible track record. You saw how they treated black people and other non-white people in the Game of Thrones show. It was awful. After what they did to Dorne and all that other stuff, much less Missandei. So, they have a terrible track record. But there's new people in charge who might want to make up for all the bad diversity, lack of diversity before. So there are new people in charge at HBO Max, with the AT&T then Discovery. So look, there's a lot of information. If you haven't read it, The World of Ice and Fire has a whole chapter on Yi, and it has a whole chapter on the Summer Isles. That it's enough information. You read it and go, you can make like a one-shot animated project on this and see if that in turn becomes other animated spin-offs about the Summer Isles or video games. Or I keep thinking they're eventually going to make an MMORPG like World of Warcraft, but you never know. But an animated project about the Summer Isles could spur a live-action project about the Summer Isles on the scale of 5 to 10 years. I don't know. But I'd like to think one of the other ones might be Summer Isles. But that's me speculating that I would like to see that. But the stuff he did confirm was there is a Yi show. It has a writer and artists attached. We've already made concept art. It's called The Golden Empire. And there are other animated projects, plural, that I'm not allowed to talk about. But as with the live-action projects, this seems to be advancing well. And I said at the beginning, I have 7 points, but really 5, because the last 2 aren't really important. I'm just going to breeze through this. This is minor news that I intentionally put at the end here. Moving on to point 6, he mentioned that they're putting out 2 more tie-in coffee table books later this year. But think of that in terms of like when I got excited and made a video about, hey, there's the new A Song of Ice and Fire official calendar, which has official concept art, commissioned artwork that we never had before, will be about Dance of the Dragons stuff this year. It's like a tie-in calendar for me. Or remember when they made that tie-in book, The Wit and Witticisms of Tyrion Lannister? Which it's not a new book, it's just a collection of fun quotes from the books. And not crap like I Drink and I Know Things, which was like an enforced meme. That when the same night they put I Drink and I Know Things t-shirts on sale in the HBO online store, you can tell they wrote this to be on t-shirts. It's actually not that clever. It's just supposed to be a snappy one-liner. I saw something the other day about Peter Dinklage being annoyed that people just walk up and say that to him more than any of the beautiful dialogue that from Martin's books for Tyrion that's really witty. But it was a book of the wit and witticisms of Tyrion Lannister quotes from the A Song of Ice and Fire novels. There are 2 tie-in books that are like that. And they're made with help from Elio and Linda, who made the World Book. But even Elio, I asked him on the forum news for this yesterday, Elio publicly on an open public forum in as many words said, if you already own Fire and Blood, you don't need to buy these. That there's actually 2 things. He said the first one is a condensed version of Fire and Blood with lavish new commissioned illustrations. That doesn't really make sense to me. He said he openly said there isn't a shred of new information in it. We're condensing it down. And it's for new people jumping in from House of the Dragons. Just tell them to read the full story in Fire and Blood. Why do you need to do that? But I think a better way they could describe this, which I would actually support, is if they said it's a new art book with extensive excerpts from the books, is a better way of thinking of it. Like they'll have 5 new lavish illustrations of Vagar the Dragon and Aemond, and like 10 pages of content about Vagar and Aemond explaining who this. So I mean, think of it as an outgrowth of the calendar, where you have the calendars that we were all excited about, reporting on it just last week. That's why I bring it up. Imagine if instead of with a calendar, it came with maybe 100 pages worth of text excerpts for showing this is what this really looks like in the book version. And he openly said, like, other than the artwork, there's nothing new in it. And they themselves, to their credit, they were honest about this and were not trying to trick people into buying it. They said, it's a tie-in for new people, it's a tie-in for artwork. I get that, but then call it an art book with text excerpts. That's actually the better way to hook people. The other thing they're working on is, they said they're working on this supplement book. It's called A Who's Who in Westeros, which sounds sort of like a print version of the character profiles they made for the World of Ice and Fire app. Now, there's this whole long story with the World of Ice and Fire that originally it was character descriptions when they were making it, and then they said, let's turn it into a history book. So in some ways, this sounds like going back to its roots of, it will be that. And if you're unaware, the World Book has a companion online app that Elio and Linda wrote. Unlike the book version, the app does have character bios in it, has character biography. So it seems like a print version of the bios that are in the app, but they are rewriting it a little to be more extensive than just copy-pasting the app. Even then, they said, if you're like the type of fan who's read all the wiki pages and read the books, you don't need this. It's a tie-in book like Wit and Witticisms of Tyrion Lannister. So I put this at the end. Martin himself is not hyping this as this giant new thing. It's a tie-in special thing. It's nothing to get worked up about. I don't blame them for that. And again, it's not something Martin's doing, taking time away from Winds of Winter. It's something Elio and Linda were doing. And apparently this is what's been eating up a lot of their time in the past year. When I thought, why aren't they picking up with their video project, as they said they wanted to do, and a couple of other wiki overhauls, and they said, we've been really busy with this. Which, fair enough, it's a commissioned work, and you're getting paid for it. Let's see what happens after this. Oh, the one new thing we will get from this art book, the condensed Fire and Blood art book calendar thingy, which he did tell us, is it will finally reveal all of the dragon colors. You know, we were obsessed with this for years of, well, what color is Vhagar? Because it's a really important dragon, but you never give a physical description for it. Last year's A Song of Ice and Fire calendar, there was a piece of official artwork, and based on Martin's descriptions that he gave the artist, that the artist then shared, they said, she's bronze with greenish-blue highlights. Then I myself then actually asked the artist, well, it's attacking Arax in this. Did he say officially what color Arax is? And she said, yes, it's white with a gold belly. Like, there's only 4 dragons that we haven't figured out the colors for yet. I think it's Vermax, Tyraxes, Morgul, and Trikos. We will get new art. It's not just, oh, it's fun new artwork. It's artwork in the calendars has input from Martin himself. And those wonderful artworks from Simonetti, from Villeneuve, who really get his visual style. He said to one of their illustrations, this is what the Iron Throne really looks like in my head. So, like a bigger version of the calendar, it's going to be illustrations based on specific descriptions from Martin, which will reveal things like what color were some of the dragons that we never knew about, which you will learn when it comes out by just reading wikis from I will give a report on it on my channel here. You don't need to buy the book if you've already bought Fire and Blood. It's an oversized art book. If you're in, but maybe you like the artwork. Some people get excited about, like, a reprint of A Song of Ice and Fire novel with 20 exclusive pieces of new illustrations in it. If they're really high quality commissioned artwork. Think of it that way. That, okay, it's a bigger version of the calendar. But that's minor news. That's just an update we got. Point 7 of new things we knew. This is worth a sentence of our time. That people keep going, oh, when he's an executive producer on other shows, it's taking time from Winds of Winter. He's not writing on these shows. He's being nice to other starting writers and paying it forward by executive producing their shows. Road Marks for HBO. A big one is Dark Winds for AMC. It follows. It's based on a novel series, actually. It's a crime novel series following these Native American police officers in New Mexico. And they've got that Native American actor who had that big episode in Westworld as the Native Americans in the park. He's the star. It looks really good. It's based on a popular series of crime novels. Dark Winds might be the next Breaking Bad for all I know. I mean, in terms of, it's going to be made by AMC. Dark Winds is going to air on AMC, and it's going to be, well, maybe like the next Fargo type thing, but, just gritty crime thing in small America. So it looks pretty good. It seems like the type of thing AMC would be interested in, that kind of thing. And he's executive producing that. road marks. They're working on Wild Cards adaptations for Peacock streaming platform, which he's, in negotiations with. He doesn't write it. He wrote the original, and they're adapting it, and it's for a group of writers, so that's fine. And really compare that Martin is going around giving money to starting writers to get their stuff adapted as TV shows, that he is paying it forward with all these other projects just as an executive producer and helping out all these other startup writers. Do you see Benioff and Weiss doing that? That I've never seen them like executive producing a show made by someone else. Explicitly the way Martin does, where he goes, I like this writer, I want to help them make a TV show. Benioff and Weiss have never done that. In any of their projects, it never really got off the ground even. It's always about them. They aren't, and the whole Austin Film Fest thing, which was, I told you I was horrified when I saw other videos of panels by real writers at Austin Film Fest, like Charmaine de Gretté is going to be one of the new executive producer writers on House of the Dragon. She gave this beautiful 1-hour panel. It's recorded as a podcast. And that what a normal panel is like is giving advice to a room full of screenwriters, because it's a writers' conference, about this is how to trust your production team, how not to run them too hard, how you need to listen to them. Here's tips as a writer for how to pace yourself. That when I could see the contrast of this isn't a Comic-Con panel, but Benioff and Weiss treated it as a Comic-Con panel or a late-night talk show thing where they weren't giving any advice to a room full of writers. They were just bragging about themselves, and even bragging about how incompetent they were, openly, and treating it as a joke, when this would have been offensive to say at Comic-Con. And this is a writers' conference where they were expecting a workshop of, real advice. That I have never seen these guys help other writers. I have never seen Benioff hire another writer. He hired up, infamously, he hired up his personal assistants. Weiss is basically an assistant. Cogman is saying, I'm a personal assistant he hired up. Then Dave Hill. I don't see him lifting up other writers, and that would be a cutting question to ask him if he ever dares come out from under a rock and show his face at a Q&A. Name other writers you have helped. And not assistants you promoted, but other screenwriters who you helped adapt their stuff. Or novelists who you have helped by executive producing to get their stuff made. The way that Martin is doing with things like Dark Winds, or there was that other show about death. I'm sorry, it's Who Fears Death by Indy Okorafor. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing that. Like, he's co-producing an adaptation of Who Fears Death, lifting up these other novelists, lifting up these other screenwriters, and the other guys aren't really doing that. And people going, oh, this is taking time away from his other projects. It's a money thing. He isn't a writer on it. He is helping other writers. And, he spends some time looking at it in meetings and stuff. It's not really a major time investment. So that's the news we have right now. It was very extensive, covered all of the other prequel projects which are in various stages of development beyond just House of the Dragon. Like, I will be referring back to this article for months. This is a big update in terms of its comprehensiveness, its wide-reaching, on this is everything I'm doing right now. And all the stages of development, that 3 live-action prequels all got past the pitch phase, into the pilot phase, the animated stuff is moving along well. We are in a real news slump now. But think that there are 3, actually 4, including House of the Dragon, there's 4 potentially prequel series and 3 animated ones are coming in the next 2 years, hopefully. That if you think everything's dead now, we will see this rebirth of everything, just in terms of the cinematic universe. And there's going to be a lot to report on. So these were great updates, and I had to take so much time away from... On March 8th, I started making a 2-hour-long report on HBO Max International Expansion, because they did a big launch in Europe on March 8th. And I realized no one's going to sit through a 2-hour thing, so I cut it up into like 5 or 6 20-minute sections by region, and I only managed to load the introduction before this blog updated. And I realized if I loaded this before talking about the big blog update, which like even like my MSN homepage is going, Martin talks about stuff. If I posted the HBO Max stuff again, people would just keep asking about the blog post, so I should drop what I'm doing and make this. This is why I sympathize with Martin trying to juggle so many projects, that I was working on a long-term project, then this came up. So I did post the short 3-minute, literally 3-minute summation of just listing off they're expanding here, here, and here in roughly this order. And then for 2 hours I explained the background of why are they expanding this way? Why does it help the Game of Thrones franchise that they're an international streamer and not only focused on the United States winning Emmy Awards? That we're a machine designed to win Emmy Awards and pander actors for awards to get ratings, when no, awards don't mean anything anymore. You need to get international expansion and demographic research that enables with a streaming service. So it's me yelling about that for 2 hours, and I cut it up into multiple videos. Please check it out, particularly if you live in the region that it's titled, okay, this is the Europe launch, this is the Asia launch, and my discussion of that. So maybe this works out in the end, that if you're watching this video for the Martin blog update, if you weren't thinking about checking out the HBO Max expansion thing, which is a video on the scale of 2 years, you understand that this is an overview for the next year, covering this is a change up in how we watch TV on the scale of 5 to 10 years. Like the age of the streaming wars and all these new platforms coming out, or like talking about, like years ago, talking about what does it mean for Disney Plus to launch and how could this affect what shows we get. It's me doing that, but for HBO Max, because it's kind of been a soft rollout up to now, that the first big mega hit they're going to be putting on that will be House of the Dragon. To an extent, Euphoria was very popular, but I mean, as a cross-genre, big we're all watching it thing, all eyes are on the return of the Game of Thrones franchise. So they want to hit the ground running. They're doing all this international expansion in preparation for Game of Thrones franchise to come back. So, having watched me cover this, please check out my video on my series of videos on, okay, this is HBO Max International Expansion and how this helps our franchise. Please like and subscribe, and then stick around for the big comprehensive guide to HBO Max International Expansion.